Alright guys, here we go today. Today we're going to talk about dividing fractions and mixed numbers. So go ahead and write down that in the title of your sheet of paper, Dividing Fractions and Mixed Numbers. If you need to pause, go ahead. Otherwise, I will be moving on to our key concepts. Alright, our key concept today, just one thing, it's a reminder of what I talked about yesterday. To divide fractions, you need to multiply by the divisor's reciprocal. Okay, so then remember, to divide fractions, we're going to multiply, so we're going to change our division to multiplication, and then we take the reciprocal, which is when you switch the numerator and the denominator of the divisor. Remember, the divisor is the second number in the division problem, the one that you're dividing by. Go ahead and write down your key concept. If you need to pause, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to our example. Okay, in our first example, we're just going to divide two fractions. So when we divide fractions, they're already in fraction form, so we don't have to worry about any turning improper fractions or anything like that. So all we are going to do is multiply by the divisor's reciprocal. That means that the first number is going to stay the same. So 2/5, nothing changes. That's how much we started with. We can't change that. Instead of writing the division symbol, I'm going to change that to multiplication. So there's our multiplying part. And then I take the reciprocal of the divisor. Remember that right there. That is our divisor. So I'm going to take the reciprocal of that number, which means I'm going to switch the numerator and the denominator, and that gives me 4/3. So the first fraction does not change. The division becomes multiplication, and then I do the reciprocal of the divisor, or the second number. Now I just multiply across. 4 times 2 is 8. 5 times 3 is 15. Okay? And that cannot be simplified, so that is done. Okay. If you need to go back, pause example 1 and write down, go ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to move on to example 2. In example 2, we have dividing with mixed numbers. So when we are dividing with mixed numbers, as with multiplication, we need to turn into an improper fraction. Okay, so you need to remember that when we multiply and divide, if it is a mixed number, we have to turn them into improper fractions first before we do any of the multiplying by the reciprocal. Got to set up the problem. So in example A, I have 3.5 divided by 5/8. So the first thing I'm going to do is set up my problem by making them fractions. So 2 times 3 is 6 plus 1 is 7. So I get 7/2 divided by 5/8. I just rewrote my problem as fractions. Now I can solve the problem by multiplying by the reciprocal. So the first fraction does not change. Then I turn the division into multiplication, and I take the reciprocal of 5/8, which is 8/5. Now I can multiply across on those. 7 times 8 is 56. 2 times 5 is 10. Okay, that's improper, so I'm going to turn it into a mixed number. 10 does go into 56 5 times with 6 left over, so 5 6/10. I recognize that I can simplify that, so that's going to be 5 3/5 as my final answer. Okay, so again, key is I have to turn them into improper fractions. I'm going to do that with B also. 4.5 divided by 1 1/4. So 4.5 turns into 2 times 4 plus 1 is 9/2. Divided by 4 times 1 is 4 plus 1 is 5, 5/4. Rewrite as improper fractions first. That's step 1. Step 2 then is turn it into a multiplication problem. So that's 9/2 times 4/5. Multiplying by the reciprocal. Multiply by the reciprocal. Now I can multiply across. That's going to give me 36 over 10 again. So that's going to be 3 6/10. And I can simplify that to 3 3/5. So there's my answers. Okay? So remember, when you're dividing with mixed numbers, you must turn them into fractions first. Then you multiply by the reciprocal, and then you go through a simplifying process. Okay, if you need to rewatch anything, go ahead. Otherwise, have a great night.